Hey guys, welcome back to Team Slinger. My name is Peter, and today we're going to be taking a look at my BT13 Minervamon deck. Everybody's excited for the new decks coming out in EX4, but I want to get ahead of the curve and take a look at how this BT11 deck gets better during the BT13 release. This deck will not be a traditional Minerva loop, but will rather be looking to make some wide board plays and establish control later in the game through its retaliation threat. If you're looking for a way to play Minervamon in the upcoming meta, then stick around and let's dive right into this profile. Starting with the eggs in this deck, we're going to be rolling with 4 copies of BT4 Xiaomon. This is super different from a traditional Minerva loop deck, but hear me out. Since we're not playing loop, this deck tends to wrestle control from the opponent and go late. You're going to go through a lot of eggs and get a lot of trash built up, and not every Digimon in this deck has retaliation. I found in playtesting that having the extra rookies with retaliation and blocker can be super huge, and sometimes you can catch your opponent off guard with the promote into suicide by swinging into their big stack. Then we're going to run 1 copy of BT3 DemiMeramon, because like I said, we're going to go late, and on the off chance you get this egg early, it's still great for building trash. Now let's take a look at our rookies. We're going to be starting with 4 copies of Ignitemon. Lots of decks play this as a staple for a rookie. It's when attacking can be a tool for us to stack our Minervamon when we want to go wide, as well as it's inheritable, allowing us to build advantage when we do get to play out cards by effects. This also happens to be the rookie we need to cross into Mervamon later, so we want to make sure we see it. Next, we're going to run 3 copies of BT2 Gabumon. This is your generic draw engine rookie, and obviously we want it to build up our trash for when Minervamon dies. Next, we have 2 copies of Gazimon. He's our classic memory blocker. I originally wasn't running it, but since this deck is slow, it's important to deny resources from your opponent, especially since lots of decks like Beelzemon will be gaining free memory left and right. Lastly, I'm running 3 copies of the Security Impmon. This card can help you get rolling with wideboard shenanigans that we want to have going on. Having a potential extra check on board is also something that can catch a lot of people off guard and really make a difference in game state. That's all for rookies. Now let's take a look at the champions. For champions, we're starting with 4 copies of Eyesmon Scatter Mode. Just to top off our draw engine, we want this on top of the Gabumon for a bunch of cycling. Then obviously we have to go 1 copy of Eyesmon for the free play on discard. Next, I like 3 copies of BT2 Devimon. Like we said earlier, not every Digimon in this deck has retaliation, so it's kind of important to make sure we can get that inheritable underneath our Digimon once Merva is out. It's more important early than it is later in the game, but you really just need any champion level with retaliation in this slot. Then we have our first BT13 addition to this deck with 3 copies of the Promo Saberdramon. This card has been a game changer in testing. The ability to spit these guys out with Mervamon and then rush them into your opponent's boss monster without having to be suspended is huge. Also, if you have to Digivolve for 3, you can choke out the enemy and then you have a potential Raid Retaliator threatening to come out of raising and kill the enemy stack. Lastly, we're going to go 1 Loweemon to Hybrid for game, standard in most of my purple decks. That's it for champions. Next, we can take a look at the ultimate level Digimon in this deck. For ultimates, we will be starting with 4 copies of BT11 BlueMeramon. This card is our go-to 3 cost to cycle a couple of extra cards and then go into Minervamon. His inheritable is great if we do get to play anything out as well. Next is another bit of our BT13 spice with the Promo Skullgreymon. I love the potential of this card to wipe out annoying Floodgate rookies or chump blockers from the enemy by deleting one of your own Digimon. It also spits out a rookie if it dies, which can help us to keep pace against removal and keep building towards that wide board. It's also really important to remember that you can delete a Digimon on play as well as when Digivolving, so dropping him for 7 to delete your Minervamon, if you have to, is absolutely a potential play. Lastly, we're going to go 1 copy of Lucemon Chaos Mode. We have tons of opportunity to play this guy for free in the deck, so it would just be silly not to run it. Now we can have a look at the Mega levels. We have 4 copies of Minervamon. This card is absolutely busted. It has retaliation, it lets you play a level 4 or lower Digimon from your trash when your opponent plays something, and then on deletion, you get either a level 5 purple Digimon or a Mervamon. In this deck, either or can be particularly powerful, so we love seeing this card. Then we're going to go with 3 copies of Mervamon, obviously a fantastic combo piece with Minerva, and when we cross from trash with the Ignitemon, we should be able to bring out 2 level 4 Retaliators, and that's how we're going to be achieving our wideboard status. Lastly, I like to round out this build with 2 copies of Creepymon. This card is fantastic, and I think more people should be running it with Minervamon. When Digivolving, you mill 2 for each Digimon your opponent has in play, and then if you mill 4, you can play a level 5 from trash. This is great to get our Lucemon and then go into Minervamon on top. That's it for our Digimon for the entire deck. So let's have a look at our options. For options, we keep it super simple in this deck. We're going to start with 2 copies of Pandemonium Flame. This is an excellent card for sacking our Minervamon to get wideboard status, and its security effect is also quite nasty. It also pairs really well with the only other option we run, 2 copies of Back for Revenge. No security effect on this card, but the combo potential for these 2 cards is insane. You can toss Back for Revenge on Minervamon, get your free Merva, and then have your boss back as well. You could also just Pandemonium Flame or drop Skull Greymon after using it for the same effect. Back for Revenge can also be super nasty on any of our Retaliators when Merva is on board because we get free rush off of her, especially Saberdramon because you can raid into enemy Digimon even if they're unsuspended. I found that this low number of options works quite well for this deck, and it's really all you need. Now we can have a look at our Tamers. We are also running super light on Tamers, so I have 2 copies of BT2 Matt Ishida. He's our standard memory Tamer, and he grabs us back a purple card. Then I have 3 copies of Analog Youth. This helps us cycle for our pieces and choose what to throw in trash for our later plays. Also being able to tap him if we delete our Minerva to get 1 memory back is very powerful. That's it for the deck profile. Next, I want to look at some tech and sideboard options. The first option I want to look at is just running 4 copies of DemiMeramon. I think this egg is totally viable. It's just not my preference. If you want to run it, go ahead. I think the deck would play super similarly. I just find that sometimes having that extra Retaliate inheritable underneath my rookies really helps. Next would be running Soulmon instead of the Devimon. I think this is also a totally valid option. And having the DP bonus on your Retaliators can actually keep them on board against chump deletion effects and make them a bigger blocking threat against small checks. The only thing I don't like in the BT13 meta is that Shine Greymon will have a DP reduction effect of anywhere from 8 to 12k, which means that even with 2 Soulmons on board, they can potentially get wiped by the effect. This kind of makes me more inclined to have the Retaliate inheritable underneath my Skull Greymons and Creepymons from the Devimon, but I do keep this card in my sideboard. Lastly, the only thing I've really considered here is the Jet Mervamon. I think that this has to compete with the Creepymon slot, which is why I'm not running it, but you could probably drop down to 2 Analog Youth and run this card. I personally think it's a win harder card and I don't like it in testing, but feel free to slot it in if it fits your playstyle. That's it for tech options and sideboard. Stick around and we'll take a look at opening hands as well as our combo potential. For opening hands, we really only have 2 things that we want to look for. The first thing for me is that I have a rookie and a champion to go on top of it. It doesn't really matter, but I definitely prefer to get the Ignitemon early and a non-scatter mode champion to go on top. Usually Devimon is the priority. The second thing we're looking for is some way to set up our search and draw. It can either be an Analog Youth or an Eyesmon scatter mode, but I'm totally fine playing either of those cards after going into a rookie turn 1. Anything else is really preference based. My ideal hand would probably look something like this if I'm going first. We have the Ignitemon and a Devimon, an Analog Youth, a scatter mode, and then I would like a mat as well. I would start by going into the Ignite, and then I would probably choose to hard play this scatter mode. We want the chip damage early before any chump blockers can come out. Then on our second turn, we can swing. This would die, hopefully. We can go into Analog Youth. We're going to be building up more trash off of that. Then we go into Devimon. We get the free draw off it. If we haven't hit an ultimate to go into by this point, we can play Mat on our next turn, grab back the scatter mode, or another card from the Analog Youth mill, and then you can keep building pressure or building a stack. So either or is really fantastic for us. Our combos really revolve around 2 possible routes. The first is where you have board priority and you're the first to go into a Mega. We go into our Minerva, assuming our trash has an on-deletion target, and now our opponent has to find a way to deal with this Minerva or to surrender a huge amount of advantage to us. If they play Digimon by effects or by cost, we build board state by Minervamon's effect, and almost always gain memory off the inheritables of BlueMeramon and Ignitemon. If they kill it right away, we can get Mervamon and 2 champions, as well as 1 memory back. If they ignore it, we can swing over their stack with Minervamon, or suicide it with an option or by battle, depending on board state. We basically always want to look for opportunities to build advantage off of this Minervamon dying. Using Back for Revenge before killing Minervamon is especially powerful because you can continue to use it to exert control or rush in with the Merva effect and get more damage down. I definitely prefer to leave it unsuspended as a wall that the enemy has to maneuver around, as it's easier for your enemy to make a mistake than it is for you to make an outplay or a read that builds advantage. Our second situation is where we're going to be playing from behind. The enemy has 2 or more Digimon and we have some trash built up. This is an opportunity we take to go into our Creepymon. When we Digivolve, we'll mill 4 or more cards because the enemy has 2 Digimon in play, and we get to play out a Lucemon Chaos Mode from the trash. This lets us pop their stack, potentially, and gain 2 memory from the inheritables we talked about earlier. Now we can go into Minerva on top of the Lucemon, and the enemy is in a position where they have to figure out how to deal with our board again, just like in the last example. You basically get all the advantage from before, but with an extra body and the enemy losing a stack. The enemy will also have to mill a lot of cards if they don't remove Creepymon, so it's definitely a difficult board state to just ignore. In either of these two board states, once our Minervamon dies, we can cross into Merva and play out 2 level 4 or lower purple Digimon. Most of the time, I prioritize getting Saberdramon down just so I can get my raid swings in and really break down the enemy board. However, from this point you have all kinds of tools to help you maintain board control and keep breaking down the enemy until you have lethal. It just takes some practice to recognize what tools you have and what optimal play is by board state. I'm going to be ranking this deck at the bottom of A tier. The deck has a lot of toolbox options and potential combo routes for you to navigate any matchup with. While the deck doesn't quite generate as much advantage as other tier 1 archetypes do just by going up the stack, you can create lots of opportunities for the opponent to make mistakes. Capitalizing on those mistakes with retaliation or removal is what will allow the deck to really shine and maximize its potential. It'll definitely still struggle against other decks that I would consider to be at the top of A tier, like Beelzemon, Shine Greymon, and Mirage Gabumon, as you will absolutely be on the back foot. You have to find ways to keep up with all the advantage that those decks tend to generate out of nowhere. I honestly usually find myself hitting 1 or even 0 security before I'm all set up to make a comeback, but the potential is definitely there. At the end of the day, this is a deck that shines as brightly as the person piloting it, and has the potential to upset other decks in the tier. If you're looking for a way to play Minervamon in the BT13 meta, I recommend you give this deck a shot and let me know what you think. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll be sure to post a deck list in the description. As usual, thanks for watching and have a great day.